Hello and welcome. It's time for French Politics here on France 24. I'm Molly Hall.
And I'm Mark Perlman. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in today's show, Emmanuel Macron's party bulldozes the competition in the first round of parliamentary elections. Traditional parties are wiped out and the extremes come up short.
Well, the president is set for a historic majority, but will record low turnout hurt his mandate to carry out reform? That's up next on the Political Brief.
Last Sunday was the first round of the parliamentary elections here in France, and Emmanuel Macron's party stole the show.
That's right. When you look at the score in terms of percentages, it was a clear victory, with some 32% of the votes going to the president's party. But when you look at the projection and the number of seats, well, it's a political tsunami. The president will likely have over 400 MPs in the National Assembly out of a total of 577.
That's true, Molly. It's incredible. The traditional parties, the conservatives on the right, the socialists on the left, scoring their worst performance ever in the Fifth Republic when you look at the number of seats. And even the far left and the far rights have suffered setbacks. Such a majority, you've only seen it twice in the past 50 years. Both in 1968 and in 1993, the conservative parties garnered some 80% of the seats. Obviously, what's interesting here is that Emmanuel Macron's party is just 1 year old, and he is reaching such an incredible result.
Indeed, and now poised for a historic majority in Parliament, the Prime Minister says France is back.
Despite the abstention, the message sent by the French people is clear. For the third consecutive time, millions of you confirmed your commitment to the president's project of renewal, togetherness, and retrieval. My fellow citizens, France is back. For a month now, the president has been able to embody, in France as well as on the international stage, confidence, willingness, and audacity. And the government, thanks to its diverse composition, highlights a radical new movement. It is determined to serve France and to fulfill French people's expectations.
So then a big win for En Marche candidates, but many political heavyweights failed to make the cut, especially in the Socialist Party, which is currently the largest party in the National Assembly. Well, it scored the biggest loss of the night, taking just 9.5% of the vote with its allies.
Yes, it's been an incredible disaster, let's put it this way, for the Socialist Party. And among the first-round losers, you have, for instance, the Socialist presidential candidate himself, Benoît Hamon. You also have the party leader, Jean-Christophe Cambadélis, who lost big in Paris, the outgoing Interior Minister, Matthias Fekl, a former Culture Minister, Aurélie Filippetti, and even two former leaders of the Green Party that has been allied with the Socialists, Cécile Duflot and Emmanuel Cos, and those are only first-round losers.
This first round of the parliamentary elections has been marked by an unprecedented loss for the left as a whole and for the Socialist Party. All seems to show that an absolute majority has already been obtained by the Republic on the move. If this majority in Parliament is confirmed and amplified, it will be virtually unopposed. There will be no control of powers in Parliament, no possibility for any true democratic debate.
Well, now the word on everyone's lips has been turnout. At 51%, it was a historic low. And opposition candidates say that's the reason they lost and that it's a danger to the Republic.
These results attest to a very unstable political situation, and the sheer number of people who abstained shows that there will be no parliamentary majority that's able to destroy our labor code, to reduce our freedoms, to promote policies that are harmful to the environment, policies that help the rich. All the policies, in fact, that the president is advocating. Not even 1 out of 2 French people voted. That's the main lesson learned in this first round. This level of abstention, which we haven't seen since 1958, highlights the persistent divisions within French society. These divisions were clearly visible in the first round of the presidential election. They are not forgotten, erased, or even overcome this evening.
Well, so then less than half of voters cast their ballots, and if that's repeated this coming Sunday, President Macron would have the majority he needs, but with a weaker mandate. It's something the government hopes to avoid.
The French electorate voted coherently to give President Macron and his Prime Minister a parliamentary majority, but we must take note of the very low participation rate. Nothing is played out. The election is held in 2 rounds. We need to stay mobilized so that in the upcoming days, the upcoming hours, everyone, whatever their political colors, work towards mobilizing citizens to go vote. This crisis of conscience is stained by a weak mobilization. We must take act.
Well, the far-right leader Marine Le Pen failed in her bid to become president, as we all know, but she could well become a member of parliament for the first time. This is her 3rd try. Her chances look good after winning some 46% of the votes in the northern region of Pas-de-Calais. However, she seems to be the tree hiding the forest. Actually, her National Front garnered a very disappointing 13% of the vote nationwide.
Barely a month after Marine Le Pen's National Front was defeated by Emmanuel Macron in the presidential election, the right-wing party suffered another setback. Only 13.2% of the turnout voted for them during the French parliamentary first-round elections on Sunday. Le Pen, however, chose to focus on the low turnout. Less than 50% of the population voted.
The turnout at this vote was extraordinarily low, which is worrying. This catastrophic abstention must raise the question of the voting system, which keeps away millions of our citizens from the ballot boxes and from a true representation.
The result could mean that the National Front will have less than 10 members of parliament, too few to constitute a group at the National Assembly, which would have given them stronger powers. Now the party is in disarray. Many are expecting changes.
If I had written the script for this, first round, obviously I wouldn't have granted us with 14% of voters. You're not going to have me tell you it's fantastic, we're having a great night. No, it's not true. Obviously, it's some kind of a setback.
With the second round to come on Sunday, much still hangs in the balance for the Front National. Party members have said that an improvement on the 2 seats they currently hold would be a victory. However, if Marine Le Pen doesn't win a seat herself, that could jeopardize her leadership.
Well, now for more on the election, joining us here is French Force Florence Vilmino.
Hey,
now, Flo, something we've got. So we've seen the big losers of round 1. Of course, that's the traditional parties. So not only then are they backing off in terms of political influence, but they're also now going to be strapped for cash a bit.
It's a particularity of French politics. French political parties get cash from contributions, donations, but the bulk of money comes from the state. And that amount of money depends on their score in the first round of the parliamentary election. The number crunching is a little bit complicated, but essentially, if a political party manages to get 1% of the vote in 50 constituencies, then for each vote, they get €1.42. Now, that number is a little bit lower if they break the law and don't put forward an equal number of men and women on their party lists, but it's still not small change. It adds up very quickly and brings them in a lot of cash.
So this means both the Conservative and the Socialist parties have lost really a fortune in the first round, and this could get even worse with round 2.
That's because there's a second slice of public financing. For each lawmaker that is actually elected, well, that lawmaker actually brings cash to their party. You can see it here. For each MP, it brings over 37,000 euros per year to the party. That means that the party with the most seats in parliament gets the most money. And if predictions are correct, well then Emmanuel Macron's La République En Marche party is about to hit the jackpot. Predictions say that the party could win about 26 million euros because of the votes and the MPs. This is a treasure trove for the party that will allow the presidential party to really implant itself across the country and to gear up for future elections. And it's quite a feat for a party that, remember, a year and a half ago didn't even exist.
Exactly. So then we're seeing big bucks for Macron's party, bankruptcy for the rest. But we do, of course, know that the biggest loser, that is the Socialist Party.
Because remember, the Socialist Party had the majority in the outgoing parliament, and then they're facing this humiliating election, a very expensive humiliation. Predictions say that the Socialist Party could lose nearly 20 million euros a year because of this election. And as for the Conservatives, Les Républicains, they could lose about 7.5 million euros a year, which is less than the Socialists, but still a tough blow for Les Républicains, especially because Les Républicains have been facing a lot of financial trouble since the previous presidential election.
So that's the money given to the parties. What about the lawmakers themselves?
Well, they get quite a lot of money themselves. On top of very generous tax breaks and a generous pension once they retire, they have a lot of cash at their disposal. According to the most recent figures, they're paid over 7,000 euros a month. That is before tax. And on top of that basic income, you'll be able to see they're given an allowance to pay for parliamentary expenses and a stipend to pay for their staff. So if you add it all up, it's about 23,000 euros a month. So that's taxpayer money at their disposal. Now, there is a high authority for transparency in public life. This is a watchdog to keep check on cash makers and on lawmakers rather, and make sure that they spend that cash in a lawful way. But essentially, they're allowed to use that money as they please. And as you can imagine, there have been calls for more transparency. And in fact, this is something that the new president, Emmanuel Macron, has promised. More transparency and more, I guess you could say, more ethics in French politics. And in fact, this could be the very first law that the new parliament votes through.
All right, Flo. Well, thank you very much for a look at that. And now that we just heard from Flo, we've got the Socialist Party that is short on cash and certainly in shambles. And many blame the former President François Hollande for their pounding at the polls. Well, so what's he been up to since he left office? Well, here he is casting his ballot in his home region of Corrèze.
I'm taking the time to enjoy this period of getting back in touch with friends, getting reacquainted with familiar places, which is helping guide my reflections.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thanks again for joining us.
Yes, indeed. We'll see you again next week here on The Political Brief.
Which majority will govern France? The parliamentary elections will tell us on June the 11th and 18th. Macron's election has completely changed the political playing field. The French go to the polls to once again determine their destiny. Decisive elections, live on France 24.